Werewolves? Well, I guess in the forest, I'd imagine. What's going on, YouTube? Today, we're going to answer one of the most divisive, yet really mundane questions in the Elder Scrolls Online, and that's, should you be a werewolf in 2024? In fact, it's the easiest time to be a vampire or werewolf because you can literally use the Armory system to pick if you want a curse to be on a specific build or not, and flipping between builds can cure vampirism or instantly reinfect you with vampirism, and same with werewolf. But how does being a werewolf stack up? We saw that the werewolves didn't really see a whole lot of touch-ups in Update 43 and with the upcoming Update 44, whereas vampires saw significant nerfs. So how does our werewolfy boy stand up in 2024? So what is a werewolf in the Elder Scrolls Online? Well, werewolf is a unique skill line you can acquire. The werewolf skills line grants you to a powerful ultimate that transforms you into a savage wolf beast, complete with a set of active abilities to use when transformed. To obtain the werewolf skill line, you must become infected by special werewolf monsters that are only active during certain times of days and location. You can also have another player infect you. By the way, this is the easiest way at one of these sites. And then if you wish to cure your lycanthropy, you need to speak to a priest of RK, and this will remove the werewolf line, and you would need to get rebitten again to do that. So I'm actually at one of those shrine locations here in Bankarai. And as a werewolf, if one of you came over here right now, I could transform, infect you, and then you would gain access to the werewolf line. And let's quickly break down some of these abilities. While transformed, this is your ultimate. Your light attacks apply a bleed for significant damage over 4 seconds. Your heavy attacks deal 50% splash damage, and your max stamina is increased. And while slotted, your stamina recovery is increased by 15%, which is notable. You don't have to be in werewolf form to get that bonus. And transforming, the act of actually transforming itself, fears nearby enemies for 3 seconds. And we're going to start with our most common spammable, which is the X button. That is your leap that deals bleed damage to people. It applies hemorrhaging. If you use it again, you apply additional bleed damage, and you apply more damage to enemies under 100% health. So as they lose more health, you deal more damage. And dealing damage with either attack restores 100 stamina and extends your werewolf transformation by 1 second. So that's why this is such a key ability for you, because obviously you're going to want to be able to keep your werewolf up, because if it ended naturally, that wouldn't be a very long effect. You also have access to a heal, Hercine's Fortitude, which gives you a bunch of health, scaling off of your maximum health. And if you're at full health, you also then restore stamina. So it's a way you can actually convert magicka into your stamina, which is just pretty good. You also gain minor endurance and minor fortitude, increasing your health and stamina recovery by 15% for 20 seconds. And while slotted, you gain major brutality and sorcery, increasing your damage from weapon and spell damage by 20%. So those are pretty good buffs and passives that you can get by being a werewolf on your Y button. Next is kind of the debuff you can do to people. Deafening Roar makes sense. Bit of a debuff, deafening, which will fear enemies for 4 seconds and setting them off balance for 7. Your roar also leaves enemies with dazed, applying major breach, minor maim, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 59-48, and reducing their damage done by 5%. And majorly, while slotted, you gain major protection, and your heavy attacks taunt enemies for 15 seconds. That's actually a pretty cool perk there, not only because major protection is just, good, but being able to taunt people could actually be really helpful if you're actually trying to utilize this in some sort of PvE situation. Oftentimes, werewolves get really shoehorned into the PvP only category, but you can see too, you can actually taunt people just with a heavy attack, and your other abilities are going to keep uptime on your werewolf. And then there's Howl of Agony, which other people prefer as their spammable, because you can see it just does crazy amounts of damage, 10,888 physical damage, and this is on a non-optimized werewolf build, and deals 10% more damage to enemies that are terrified, and another 10% more damage to enemies that are off balance, which you can easily get both of those things. And one final thing that you can do to people, you can shred enemies in front of you, putting disease damage on them, which gives them major defile, reducing their healing received and damage shield strength by 10%. And enemies hit by this also have the disease status effect, which is pretty helpful as well. So you can see these are all pretty good bonuses and things that you can get For being a werewolf, let's quickly break down the passives. The first thing you're able to do is devour corpses. You can spend time devour corpses, restore some of your max health, which can be pretty helpful even in doing things like solo arenas, giving you a bit of a reprieve where you're just getting health back faster than usually you take damage. Pursuit, increasing your movement speed by 30% and increasing the stamina. Your heavy attacks restore by 50%. Blood Rage, when you deal damage, the duration of your werewolf transformation is increased by 4 seconds. This can occur once every 5 seconds. So you can see you don't have to just spam your X ability. You can slowly maintain your werewolf with this. Savage Werewolf Strength, you increase your weapon and spell damage by 18%. You get Major Resolve as well. Blood Moon is just your ability to bite other players. And then Call of the Pack reduces the cost of remaining in your werewolf transformation by 40% for each transformed werewolf or direwolf in your group, excluding yourself, up to a maximum of 80%. So this is if you're using a pack buff or if you're grouped with other players who are being inside of the werewolf, you can actually boost further the transformations and other things inside of that as well, up to 80%. And as a quick aside, if any of you are looking to become a werewolf, join my Discord in the description below, because we have tons of people that can make you a vampire, a werewolf, or put you on the right path and get you something even better. Because that leads into the next part of this video, is that's why might you want to be a werewolf, and why might you not want to be? And the biggest benefit is when you transform into your werewolf, you have tons of skills right at your disposal that can do pretty much everything that you would need. You have the ability to deal extra damage to people who are low health. You can convert your lower resource into your main resource. You can heal. You have mobility. You have so many things that are helpful. You can even taunt if you would want to for PvE purposes. But it begs a really interesting question, and that's, is werewolf better than this? Because if you want an easy one bar option, the Oakensoul ring exists. And in fact, pretty much every buff that the werewolf gives you is on the Oakensoul ring. And a lot of times too, werewolves also use the Oakensoul ring because it gets you access to even more buffs that they don't have access to. So it paints a really interesting picture then, as if you're going to limit yourself to one bar, why limit yourself to being a werewolf? And that poses some even more questions, because if you take a werewolf into Cyrodiil, Battlegrounds, Imperial City, you will be targeted. Your hitbox appears larger. Players are generally going to focus you more because you are a more mobile target that has higher damage output that they perceive anyway. And just you are painting yourself a target on your back. You also take damage by things like Dawnbreaker and other bonuses that deal damage to undead, Daedra, other things. It's not going to deal extra damage against you. And since Dawnbreaker is one of the most popular, things in the game, that potentially is going to be a major drawback from you. You also are pretty good targets for Nightblades. Nightblades with their invisibility, even though it looks like that will be tweaked here in the future, can be very detrimental because you take additional poison damage. And if you're trying to maintain your werewolf by attacking somebody and they're going in and out of invisibility, that can be pretty painful for you. But that does ask an important question though. Is werewolf still good for PvP? And the answer is actually yes. In fact, you can gain a significant amount of buffs by using the Oakensoul ring. You have a significantly good toolkit, you have mobility, and you have the resource swapping. You can take your magicka and turn it into your stamina, which is your primary resource. And you can get tons of stamina because you are getting a bonus to your stamina by being in your transformed state. So it is still a really powerful build, and it also doesn't really require you to have crazy types of gear. I'm actually going to recommend a YouTuber for this, Lycanthropy Gaming, that I'm going to put in the description below, because he does pretty much solely werewolf-based content for ESO. So he'll talk about which races, classes, and other things are best if you want to play as a werewolf, because yes, there are drawbacks, but most of those drawbacks would apply if you were another class. For example, I play as a sorcerer. Sorcerers have very bad AoE damage. They do really good single target damage. They can do other really nice and helpful things, but they lack in that AoE. You're not going to see 1vx videos as often with sorcerers. Obviously, in the past updates, they've been very good, but sometimes they can be a little bit weak in that sense. Nightblades are getting nerfed and tweaked, so Nightblades are going to be a little bit more difficult because of how they're changing them to be a toggle ability for their stealth. So you can see, just because you play a class, there's always going to be cons. The cons are you take more damage from Dawnbreaker and you get targeted. more. But if you're in a battleground that's a 4v4, even if you are targeted, that just gives your team composition more ability to keep you alive, and you can deal damage output to the enemy. So just because you're the target and there are a few things that you take more damage to and you're weaker to, well, that's just the truth pretty much for everybody. And how do we look for PvE content? Well, werewolves can generally deal about 70 to 80,000 damage on a parsing dummy if built correctly, and they use pretty much the exact same sets that you would use for any other PvE DPS because they're doing the same things. In fact, sometimes it's even easier for them, such as light attacking is even more prevalent. So proccing things like Kinra's, Pillar of Nerds, and other such things are still relatively straightforward. So you don't have to worry about doing that. Also, it is kind of funny. Somebody did a werewolf fight while we were recording. And in the description below, I will link to you guys some builds if you're interested in using like a werewolf build for Maelstrom Arena, because that's a pretty common build to take werewolves into. And overall, I think that it can still be very useful for new players if you're interested. And the other nice thing about Werewolf is it's not dependent on having these other DLCs. You don't need a mythic like the Oaken Soul Ring. You can simply just use the Werewolf as kind of a one-stop, one-bar build to take into things like Maelstrom Arena, do other types of content, overland content, even dungeon content can still be completed by werewolves. It's definitely more niche, but you have to remember is that the majority of players, for better or for worse, have ESO Plus, they have mythics. You may not. And if you don't have mythics, there are tons of cool ways that you can build a werewolf to be very good. And in fact, there's a whole YouTube channel dedicated to how to build a werewolf. And for those of you who've never utilized the Armory system, it saves your build how you are. So here you can see my Mundus is the mage, my curse is none, that would be vampirism or werewolf, and my outfit is so. If I went down to one of my builds that utilized werewolves and I equipped it, I would now gain vampirism. So if you save a build while currently being a werewolf, a vampire, or normal, it will then save that inside the armory. Then you can either switch to a blank build and then use that to kind of reset all your attributes and things, or you could switch to a build that essentially does not have one. Every single build can be utilized for different things, depending on the type of content that you do, and that makes it helpful because then you don't have to be a werewolf all the time, and you don't have to then find somebody to bite you whether or not you want to flip back and forth between content. So that's kind of the easy way to send off on this video to ask the question, should you be a werewolf in 2024? And the answer I would say is if you want to be one, this is the time where there's really no drawbacks in the sense that if you try it out for PvP, which is its primary utilization, or solo type content, and you have the ability to either pair it with the Oaken Soul, or you don't have the Oaken Soul Ring and you want an easy one-bar build, it's a perfectly viable way to play the Elder Scrolls Online. And if you're going into types of content where you're finding yourself struggling a little bit more, such as Cyrodiil, where sometimes in Cyrodiil, especially with the more overworld content aspect of it, and because you're required to really be in the fight, you may find yourself getting attacked by more people than you're comfortable with, versus in Battlegrounds, you might be a little bit more flexible because the team compositions are more balanced. You may be able to just switch back and forth. Maybe you want to be a one-bar build for your normal class inside of Cyrodiil. Maybe then you want to take your werewolf class into Battlegrounds. That's going to be totally up to you. You can utilize the free Armory system to do it. And yeah, that's going to be the answer. Whether or not you want to do it is up to you as always. And if your heart leans towards it, give it a try. Join the Discord below and we'll be able to make you a werewolf so you can try it out. So thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope this video discussion was helpful. If you're interested, we can even do class-specific ones. Should you be a Templar in 2024? Should you be a Nightblade in 2024? That way we can highlight the class changes that they've received. But it's up to you if you find that interesting. And as always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. You guys found the hidden word for last month, so we're refreshing our actual thing here soon. But all you need to do to enter is leave a comment in the comments below. Second thing is just make sure you're subscribed/follow on Twitch and Twitter. And the third thing is look for a hidden word to be flashed upon the screen. It took you guys, I think, 3 days to find the last one. So for this month, there'll also be another hidden word. And then I will update the graphic here later for the Friday video, the Golden Vendor video, that is, to show you guys who the winners were for last month. But as always, it's a rolling thing that we do. So just feel free to comment, subscribe, and then look for hidden words to be flashed on the screen. So thank you guys so much again, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.